Egyptian Science in Medieval Arabic Writings from Egyptology, the Missing Millennium. Originally written by Okasha L. Daly. This audio presentation is read and voiced by Shakim Ra. It is provided to the public by Amin-Ra University. God made inherent in us the need for knowledge of the history of our predecessors, just as was the need for our predecessors for history of then predecessors, and just as will be the need of those who shall come after us for our history. El-Jahiz, who died in 771 CE from the Al-Hawan 142. Classical sources portray Egypt as the source of all sciences. Some of them were available in Arabic as early as the 8th century CE and helped to shape the medieval Arab view of ancient Egypt as the land of wisdom and science. Arab scholars were generous in their praise of the sciences of ancient nations regarding scientists, irrespective of origin or creed, as ancestors who had contributed to a universal process to which every nation contributes its share in its own time. Almost all medieval Arab books on any science start with a chapter on previous scientists in the field, and so establish a long, continuous chain of knowledge. This is clear from the examples of Al-Nadim el-Fihirist, Sa'id al-Andalusi, Tabakat, and Bin Abi Usabaya in Tabakat. In these books, pre-Islamic Egyptian scientists are portrayed as being masters of science and wisdom who belong to the land where science and wisdom originated. Two examples may serve to illustrate this point. Al-Nadim from Al-Fihirist 425 said that the origin of alchemy was in Egypt, which produced many writers and scientists who obtained the knowledge from the temples of Egypt. El-Nawairi, quoting Al-Hassan bin Ibrahim, said that in antiquity, Egypt was the destination for students of science and scholars of exact science in order that they sharpen their brains, intellect, and intuition. This acclaim may be due in part to the obvious remains of the material culture of ancient Egypt, which dominated the country's landscape, and it was logical for medieval Arab writers to assume that ancient Egyptians had advanced knowledge in the many fields for erecting such magnificent buildings as the pyramids and for sculpting such great statues as the Sphinx. The precision with which Egyptians engineered their monuments in terms of orientation and astronomical connections, as well as the materials used for their colors, were amongst the scientific achievements that most impressed the medieval Arabs. It was common for long passages to be quoted from classical writers such as Homer, Herodotus, Iamblichus, Plato, and Plotinus, even in Arab literary works, for example in the writings of al-Sajistani and of Ben Fatih. Surprise at these early Arabic translations on the part of the highly respected modern scholars seems to stem from a misleading presumption that Arabs translated only what was of direct, practical use to them, such as medical books. For example, the eminent Orientalist C.H. Becker specifically commented on the enthusiasm of the Caliph Al-Ma'mun, early 9th century, whom he refers to as an enlightened despot, questioning his motives for translating a large number of works by Greek philosophers. Becker found such enthusiasm unknown and abnormal in the Orientals, suggesting that the Arab translations were not, as a result of an abstract desire to acquire science and knowledge. Because of this had been the case, then Homer or the tragedies would have been translated as well, but the reality was that people did not take any interest in nor feel any need for them according to this source. Becker's assertion that the Arabs did not translate Homer is easily disproved by looking at the long quotations from Homer by al-Sajistani, who referred to an Arabic translation of Homer produced by Stephanus the Elder Ostanis. This is likely to be the Greek Byzantine Alexandria Ostanis, the philosopher and alchemist who, according to Al-Nadim, also translated alchemical works for Prince Khalid bin Yazid in the 1st century of Islam. Science, ilim, and wisdom, hikmah, were interlinked in Arab thought and both related to knowledge. The Arabic word ilim and its derivations appear more than 700 times in the Quran, thus giving it a profound significance in Arab culture. The word has a wide spectrum of meaning, including knowledge, learning, reasoning, and wisdom, and defies all attempts to define it in a nutshell. Any attempt to narrow the meaning of ilim is artificial. For Arab writers, it seems to have been difficult to isolate the concept of science from concepts of philosophy, knowledge, and general wisdom. Seeking knowledge is equivalent to an active worship in Islam, and it is therefore incumbent on every Muslim to seek out knowledge that is useful, not harmful. And almost everything worth learning is called ilim, or ilam. A considerable number of medieval Arab writers produced a large body of work on the divisions of knowledge, and this has been well studied and analyzed. Such was its importance that as eminent a scholar as Al-Ghazali devoted several works to the definitions and divisions of the sciences and started his most famous work, Baya Ulum al-Din, with a chapter, the longest in the book, on this subject. In summary, sciences may be divided into two main types. Manqul means transmitted sciences. It includes knowledge, which is understood through study and by going back to the founder of the science and his followers through a recognized chain of transmission. It also includes religious science, for example, Ilim al-Hadith, the science of the Hadith. Maqul are the rational or natural sciences, which are learned through innate reason and intellect, for example, logic, physics, and mathematics. It is not suggested that the Manqul sciences are irrational or devoid of reason, because this is certainly not the case. But it may be said that the natural sciences have more of a universal nature, transcending linguistic, national, and religious barriers. This is an oversimplified summary of a complex issue, but it demonstrates the lack of a religious prohibition on Muslims from seeking scientific knowledge as a universal quest, wherever it was to be found. One of the ways in which early Muslim scholars categorized scientific knowledge was on the basis of its necessity to humanity. So, for example, Al-Jahiz, in one of his treatises, recalled the instruction of his teacher Abu Ishaq Ibrahim bin Sayyad al-Nasam, who divided knowledge into 8 kinds. One was optional, ikhtiyar, that of the knowledge of God, his prophets, and exegesis of holy books. Today, it would be considered very radical thinking to include in optional knowledge the religious studies of God and his prophets, yet it was widely and amicably discussed during the 8th century, as demonstrated, for example, by Al-Jahiz. The other 7 sciences were obligatory, iditrar, and included in the study of chronicles, histories of ancient countries, biographies, and monuments, al-siyar wa al-athar. Generally, but not exclusively, the word athar was used in medieval Arabic to mean traditions of the prophets, but it was also used to mean traditions and relics/monuments. Pre-Islamic Egypt was perceived in medieval Arab writings as the land where science and wisdom originated, as seen in the above-cited example of Al-Nadim. In many medieval Arabic sources, scientists from pre-Islamic Egypt and their achievements are described at length. These pre-Islamic scholars from Egypt were thought of as Egyptians, but they wrote in Greek and were thus often designated as Greek. They included Meton and Euctemon from Alexandria, both of whom flourished in the 5th century BCE. Aristarchus, the astronomer, who around 200 BC devised the first heliocentric model of the universe. Eratosthenes, who measured the size of the Earth and calculated its diameter. Another scientist well known from Arab sources is Zosimos, the alchemist from El Dirtim in Upper Egypt. El-Nadim and Al-Kifti refer to the scientist hero, 1st century CE, designated Haran the Egyptian, the Rumi the Alexandrian. Hero's book on pneumatics, cited by Al-Kifti, survived only in its medieval Arabic translation. This book, dealing with mechanical devices, was very popular among medieval Arab scholars and was a main source for mechanics, Ilim al-Hayal, in the Muslim world. Another famous Egyptian scientist was Apollonius the carpenter, Apollonius of Perga of the 2nd century BCE, a mathematician who wrote a book on conies, al-Mukarratat. He was from Alexandria, the city in which Euclid, the father of geometry, flourished much later. Another important Egyptian scientist was Ptolemy, 2nd century CE, an astronomer and geographer whose book Amalgist was the foundation for the mathematical astronomy and geography of Arab scholars. Most of these pre-Islamic Egyptian scientists belonged to and flourished in the Alexandrian school, which was still in existence and widely renowned when the Muslims arrived in Egypt in the 7th century. Even if this Alexandrian school was no longer functioning when Muslims arrived, its scholarship formed part of the foundation upon which the famed scientific knowledge of Haran in Baghdad was built.